So, how do you think that this war started? It all started from a prophecy told to King Priam and Queen Hecuba of Troy about their son paving the way for the destruction of their own city. Because of this, the king and queen commanded a servant to kill their newborn baby. So, the servant left the baby on top of the mountain to die. Days passed. The servant returned to where he left the baby to find the baby alive and well, and so impressed by this, decided to raise him as his own. The child is named Paris and grows up to be fair in his judgment that even the gods respect him. He eventually reunited with his family that seems to have forgotten about the prophecy. Then, a love contest between Zeus and his brother Poseidon started. The two both wanted Thetis, a sea nymph, to be his bride, but because of the consequences that will certainly happen if Zeus or his brothers lay with her, a son that is stronger than them and possesses a weapon that is more powerful than a thunderbolt, and truncheon would be born. And then Zeus came up with an idea. He made it so that Thetis would have to marry King Peleus. After Thetis' marriage was all figured out, Zeus hosted a wedding party for the couple. All of the gods and goddesses, and also all mythical creatures, were invited, except the goddess of discord, Eris. But even though she's not invited, she still went to the gathering. She was turned away, and as a result of her annoyance, she threw a golden apple with the words, "For the fairest," inscribed on it.
After Ares threw the golden apple, which is for the fairest, the three goddesses Hera, goddess of women, childbirth, marriage, and family, Aphrodite, goddess of beauty and love, and Athena, goddess of wisdom, wanted to know who among them deserves it. Zeus was unable to decide by himself, so he sent the goddesses to Paris, the prince of Troy, to decide. Since Paris also didn't know who to pick, the three goddesses started to bribe him. First, Hera offered to grant him political power and a throne if he were to choose her. Then, Athena offered him wisdom and skills in battle. Finally, Aphrodite promised Paris the most beautiful woman in the world, Helen of Sparta. Without a doubt, Paris immediately chooses Aphrodite. Since Paris chose Aphrodite, he went to get Helen as soon as possible. But unfortunately, Helen was already married to King Menelaus, the king of Sparta. Luckily, Menelaus was currently visiting Crete, a Greek island, so Paris took the chance, under the disguise of a diplomatic mission, to abduct Helen. Before Helen could look up to see Paris, she was shot with an arrow by Eros, and fell in love with Paris the moment she saw him. After King Menelaus came back to Sparta, he immediately discovered that his wife had been kidnapped. He asked for Paris to give back Helen to him, but Paris refused, and the Trojan War started.
To recover Helen and conquer Troy, King Menelaus invokes the oath of Tyndareus. So, what is this oath? This oath was agreed by King Tyndareus, father of Helen, and it says that the man who would be chosen by Helen among the suitors would be defended and protected by suitors against any dishonor. Thus, when the oath was invoked, all of the Greek kings got together to help him fight. However, Achilles and Odysseus were reluctant to go. Odysseus doesn't want to go to Troy because of the prophecy that if he goes to Troy, it will take too long for him, specifically 20 years, to go back. Thus, he will not be with his wife and son for a long time. so he pretended to be insane by planting salt in his fields. Meanwhile, Achilles also refuses to go, knowing that he would have a glorious but shorter life there at Troy. His mother disguised him as a girl to avoid being in a war. However, soon they were caught and forced to join the war. When the ships are all gathered and ready to be sailed to go to Troy, the wind stopped blowing. Thus they couldn't go. Meanwhile, Prophet Calchas stated that goddess Artemis was upset because Agamemnon killed a sacred deer and boasted that he was a better hunter than her. And to appease her, a royal maiden shall be sacrificed. So, Agamemnon sacrificed his daughter, Iphigenia, and Artemis took her to be a maiden in one of her temples. And after this, the wind started to blow, and they were able to sail. This trip to Troy took 10 years.
Troops arrive at Troy. After landing, skirmishing, and pitching their camp, Odysseus and Menelaus proceed as ambassadors to Troy to demand the surrender of Helen. But this proposal, in spite of the inclination of Helen herself and the admonition of Trojan Antenor, never takes hold, owing to the opposition of Paris. War is declared. The army are standing opposed to one another, prepared for a fight, when they agree to a peace treaty that the whole conflict will be decided by a duel between Paris and Menelaus. Paris is overcome in the duel and is rescued from death by the intervention of Aphrodite. When Agamemnon presses for the fulfillment of the treaty, the Trojan Pandarus breaks the peace by shooting an arrow at Menelaus, and the agreement falls apart. The first open engagement in the war begins, in which, under the protection of Athena, Diomedes performs miracles of bravery and wounds even Aphrodite and Ares. Diomedes and the Lycan Glaucus are on the verge of fighting when they recognize one another as hereditary guest friends and stop their duel, a marker of how important is the concept of hospitality. The day ends and calls truce with an indecisive duel between Hector and Ajax, son of Telamon. Death of Patroclus. During the war, Achilles allows his friend Patroclus to borrow his armor and enter the battle with their contingent of soldiers to help the distressed Greeks. Supposing it to be Achilles himself, the Trojans in terror flee from the camp before Patroclus. At last, Patroclus himself is slain by Hector with the help of Apollo. Death of Hector. After Patroclus died because of Hector, Achilles repents of his anger, reconciles himself to Agamemnon, and on that following day, furnished with new and splendid armor by Hephaestus at the request of Thetis, avenges the death of his friend on countless Trojans, and finally on Hector himself.
Achilles succeeds in killing Hector, dishonoring his body for days until being persuaded to stop by King Priam. Soon after, Paris, with the assistance of Apollo, shoots Achilles in his heel, who could not bathe in the river Styx and therefore was able to get wounded, eventually leading to Achilles' death. It took the efforts of Ajax and Odysseus to save Achilles' body from the Trojans, causing a dispute between them on the ownership of Achilles' armor. The Greek commanders choosing Odysseus threw Ajax into a murderous rage, and only Athena's intervention did he realize his folly, committing suicide due to shame. The death of Achilles and Ajax, combined with years of unsuccessful siege, led to the Greeks increasingly turning to the oracles. Prophet Calchas told the Greeks that Troy could not fall without Heracles' bow, which was with Philoctetes in Lemnos after being left behind due to injury. Odysseus and Diomedes retrieved the weapon and Philoctetes, who, upon returning to Troy, shot and killed Paris with Heracles' bow. Despite those events, the war seemed no closer to ending. "10 years have passed since the beginning of the war. Needing to find a way to win, Odysseus devised a plan to take over Troy. The plan involves the construction of a large wooden horse filled with soldiers that is to be given to the Trojans through a Greek named Simon. He was to be given a cover story on why the Greeks retreated, the existence of the horse, and why it must be let in. In short, to appease Athena. Despite the protest of Cassandra and a priest named Laocoon, the horse was let in. At night, Greek soldiers within the hollow horse snuck out and opened the gates, allowing the hiding Greek army to pour into Troy. The Greek army massacred, burned, and looted the city. The destruction of Troy eliminated any chances of a Trojan victory, ending the Trojan War. Despite their victory, the gods had scores to settle with the Greeks. Only Nestor and his army, Menelaus and Helen, live relatively happy lives and even afterlives after the war, with most dying on their sail home or shortly thereafter.